I'm going to show you how to make the bunny slippers from Kreative Kiwi. For this I'm going to be using a 6x6 hoop, 2 layers of washaway stabiliser per hooping, my squizzers, a selection of threads, some that I've got matching bobbins, some masking tape. I'm recycling a strap as I'm going to be stitching the toddler size. There is provision for a strap around the back of the heel. And I've got my fabrics and batting cut to size. I'm going to go through my fabrics a little bit. I've got some Solvay topper. This is a washaway stabiliser, and that's going to prevent the stitching sinking into my fabric when we come to do the facial features. I've got some ABS fabric, which is non-slip. You can buy it from Etsy. It's a fabric that's got like little silicone dots all over it so that you can't slip. I've got regular fleece, which is I'm going to use for the upper and for the lining of the sole. I've got some Decoville Heavy, which is an interfacing for bags, and that is going to stiffen the sole itself. And it's thermal adhesive as well, so I've ironed that onto my batting, and I'm just using regular Vilene 295 high loft batting, and those are the rest of the fabrics and batting for the upper. You'll find a link to this design in the video description below, along with lots of other information, so do take the time to have a look. You will be constrained by your hoop size as to which sizes of these slippers you will be able to stitch out. They go from a UK size 6 toddler up to a UK size 10 adult. If you have a look on the website, Kreative Kiwi's website, you'll be able to see which sizes you can stitch in which hoops. You're going to start off by hooping your 2 layers of washaway stabiliser. And then we're going to pin around the top edge of the hoop. So take your pin, any pin with a head will work, place it on top of your inside hoop frame, push it through the stabiliser, and then bring it back through the stabiliser again, and that will anchor it. And you're going to do that on all 4 sides. The larger your hoop, the more pins you will use. Load the file for the sole into your machine along with your neutral thread colour, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for your batting. Place your stiffener and your batting over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim away the excess from around the edge of the stitch line, taking care not to cut your stitches, of course. Place your fabric for the lining of the slipper over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Next you're going to do the quilting, so make sure you've got an appropriate thread colour loaded into your machine for that, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. Turn your hoop over and place your backing fabric over the outline and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. Trim away the excess fabric from both back and front of your hoops, so turn your hoop over and take care not to cut the stitching. Load your matching bobbin and thread colour for the satin stitching around the border of the sole into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 6, and that's going to zigzag the raw edge. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip. If you find when you stitch thicker or denser materials that your thread breaks or your machine doesn't like it, you can do two things. First is to slacken off your tension. So for example, if you're at 0, take it down to -1. If it still plays up, then take it down a little bit further. The second thing you can do is slow your machine down. That will make a huge difference as well. So two things to try if your machine plays up when you stitch thicker, denser fabrics. We're now going to stitch round number 7, and that's going to do the satin stitch border around the edge of the sole. So make sure that you've got your matching bobbin and thread for that loaded into your machine. That's the sole finished, so we can now free this from the hoop. So turn your hoop over and trim around the edge, taking care not to cut your stitches. That's your sole finished, so you can now set it aside for the minute. We now come to the second hooping, and that's going to be the upper. Load the file into your machine along with your neutral thread. Hoop and pin your 2 layers of wash away stabiliser. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for your batting. Place your batting over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim away the excess batting from around the edge of the stitch line, taking care not to cut your stitches. Place your front fabric over the outline and tape it in place, and I'm just going to trim a little bit off here just so that I can stick it down. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 3 to secure it. Load your thread colour for your bunny's mouth into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 4. Load your thread colour for the bunny's nose into your machine, and then stitch round number 5. Load your thread colour for your bunny's whiskers into your machine, and then stitch round number 6. I'm going to place my Solvay topper down. This is a water-soluble stabiliser and it's designed to go over the top of your work to prevent your stitches from sinking into any fabric that's got a pile. So for example, deep fleece, fur, velvet, velour, anything like that, velveteen, it just stops your stitches from disappearing. So place it over the top of your rabbit's face, and we're going to be stitching the eyes next, so you want to make sure that it's from the nose upwards, and then tape it in place. And then we're just going to stitch over the top of it from now on. Load your thread colour for the colour of your bunny's eyes into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 7. Load your black thread for your bunny's pupils into your machine. I've also loaded a matching bobbin for this because where I'm going to have high contrast black on white, I want to make sure that none of the contrasting threads show through. And then you're going to stitch round number 8. Load your white thread for the reflection in his eyes into your machine, and again I've loaded a matching bobbin for this. And then you're going to stitch round number 9. Load your thread colour for the eyebrows into your machine, and then stitch round number 10. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip. If you want to do a girl bunny, then stitch the eyelashes. If you want to do a boy, then skip them. Next is the eyelashes, so load your thread colour for them into your machine if you're going to stitch them. And then you're going to stitch round number 11. I'm doing mine in black, and I've also loaded a black bobbin into my machine with it. We're now going to stitch the black definition around the eyes and the eyelids. So load your thread colour for that into your machine. I'm staying with black with a black bobbin, and then stitch round number 12. Just remove your hoop from the machine for a minute and just check that you haven't got any tape around this area here where the stitch line is, because we're now going to start doing the satin stitching, and we're going to start with the cheeks and the nose, so you don't want it getting in the way. Load your thread colour for your satin stitching along with your matching bobbin into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 13, and that's going to do the cheeks and the nose. We're now going to remove the Solvay topper from the face, so just tear it off. We're now going to attach our backing fabric, so turn your hoop over, place your fabric over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 14 to secure it. We're now going to trim up all the excess fabric, including from the centres here. We're going to start on the back. And take good care, of course, not to cut your stitches. When you cut out these areas for the loops, make sure that you only cut the fabric and not the stabilizer. And now do the same on the front. And you want to make sure that you take away all the batting as well from in that area. Making sure that you've got your matching bobbin and thread colour for the satin stitching loaded into your machine. You're now going to stitch round number 15, and that's going to zigzag the raw edges of your upper. And lastly, we're now going to stitch round number 16, and that's going to do the satin stitching over the top of the zigzagging. Now that it's all stitched, we can now free this from the hoop. First of all, I'm just going to trim out the stabilizer from the two loop areas. And these are loops so that you can attach elastic to it. We're now going to dissolve the excess stabilizer from around the edges, so take a cotton bud and some warm water and just run it round the edge. We're now going to piece together the upper with the sole. You want to find the centre of the sole and of the toe of the upper. You've got a series of dots here where you had the start and stops of the quilting, so that piece is easy. For the upper, fold it in half, take a pin and then mark the halfway point. Then you're going to align that with the centre of the sole and clip them or pin them in place. I prefer clips because it doesn't distort the fabric. And you want each of the satin stitch lines sitting one on top of the other. Oops. And we can now remove that pin. There's a couple of ways you can stitch these. You can do it on your sewing machine, and you can either stitch in the ditch, which means that you stitch where the satin stitch meets the fabric of the slipper, and you start in the middle and you go around each side and then go back to the middle and then do the other side. Doing it that way, if the fabric creeps a little bit, you don't end up with a gap that you can't close at the toe. So it might be a bit, you might find it a bit more awkward doing one side than the other, but do persevere because you will get a much better result. The other way, of course, is to stitch it by hand, and for that you would do it stitch in the ditch, and that's where I'm going to do it today because my machine's in for service, so I haven't got my sewing machine handy. So all I'm going to do, I'll start it off, then I'll stitch it along a little way, and then when I've finished I'll catch up with you again. I've just threaded a needle with the same thread that I've used on the border here, and I'm going to take the first clip off. I'm going to push the needle through so that it lands in the ditch on this side, and where I've used white thread it's easy to see, white ABS, it's easy to see, and the knot will be hidden and sandwiched between the two pieces. So what I would do is go back a little way, so I'm going backwards at the moment, not forwards, so that again my needle comes up right in the ditch. And just take your time, there's no hurry. And then I'm going to go down right in the very corner here and come up on the back in the ditch, and I'm just going to overstitch a couple of times this area here, because where the foot is pulled in and out, that's the area of most stress. I can't see what I'm doing on camera. Okay, I'm sure you'll forgive me just this once. Okay, and through again. So I've gone round there twice, and that will hold that nice and firmly. So I'm just going to remove more of the clips. So then it's a case of back stitching. So I'm just going to go up through here a little way along, and you don't have to use tiny stitches. You can use sort of, I don't know, 3mm stitches, 3-4mm, and then back. Just make sure that you get, when you push your needle through, it's not that difficult to get through, because you're not actually going through the satin stitching, you're actually going through the fabric. So and then along a little bit further. And down, and I'm just going to keep doing that all the way around. Because I haven't got a machine foot pressing down on here, I haven't got the same risk of it creeping from the pressure and the pushing of the dog feet. So I don't have to worry about starting in the middle. I can actually start at the edges. So I'm going to carry on and do that, and I will join you again once I'm done. So there's my sole stitched onto the upper now, and I've also put the strap on that I showed you at the beginning of this video. You can use elastic. Bra elastic is nice and smooth and will work far better than any other, I think, and it's just the right width as well, and it's soft. So use whatever you can. You can recycle, you can reuse things. Try it. So once you've made your slipper, all that remains is to stitch one more, and then you've got a pair. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos as soon as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's always lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. You'll find a link to this design in the video description below, along with lots of other information such as where I get my supplies and some discount codes for you as well.